I was withdrawing from everyone, which can cause depression, which can cause someone to drink, which can cause them to be depressed, cause them to drink more, and be more depressed. Anyways, so people relapse because they're not connected to a community. That's why people relapse, in my opinion, from my experience. And then what can we do to combat the relapse? I think the biggest thing is to help reduce that stigma around recovery, because people relapse. Some people relapse, like myself, because they were hiding the fact that they had a problem, and they were hiding the fact that they were in recovery, and they were just trying to keep it hush hush and just be sober on their own. I think the way that we combat that is reduce the stigma, let it be known. We don't have to be anonymous. We could say, hey, I'm sober because if I drink, it's a problem.
The following is a conversation with Tony Garcia. He is a retired Army veteran, as well as an alcoholic of over 27 years, who is now currently sober and living a sober recovery lifestyle. I talk a lot about mental health on this channel, and sobriety and suicide, because those are the things that have greatly affected and impacted my life in one way, shape, or form. And I also believe that it affects every single person on this planet, whether they're aware of it or not. And the reason that they may not be aware of it is that there exists a stigma where we do not talk about things, because it was commonly held for a little while that if you don't talk about something, then it doesn't exist. That is not the way reality works. Reality will continue to exist whether you speak about it or not. And the very first thing that we need to do is we need to communicate more and have deeper conversations and let the world know that they are not alone. We need to remove the stigma around alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide, mental health, and depression, because we are all beautiful human beings having a very beautiful human experience. But it can only be beautiful if we continue to reach out and communicate and grow with one another. This following conversation with Tony Garcia has reminded me of the importance of speaking to one another, whether you're going through it or not, and more importantly, being able to listen and understand that we are all human beings. My friends, the following is a conversation with Tony Garcia. Thank you very much. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Rex.
How are you doing?
Good, man. By yourself?
It's been a while since I actually saw you.
Yeah, man. Been busy.
Gotcha. All right, so we're just gonna jump right into it.
Let's do it.
Why sobriety?
Why sobriety? Gosh.
Yes.
So for me, it was legit a matter of life or death.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I drank a lot. I was depressed, and the drinking just fueled, the depression. So I got to a point to where I wanted to stop drinking, but I couldn't. Like a couple reasons. I would feel sick, when I'd stop.
Withdrawal?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second one was just like, it's what I knew. Like I couldn't see myself not drinking. So I just got into like a really deep state of depression. I was drinking to the point where like I didn't even go into work, and the fueling of the being drunk and trying to stay drunk so I don't feel sick, and then feeling the guilt of locking myself in the house and drinking just kind of spiraled out of control until the point where I just gave up, and I was just like, that's it. I'm just gonna sit here and drink until hopefully I don't wake up again.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So luckily a friend got me into treatment, but that's why I know I have to stay sober now, because each time I relapsed was worse than the previous one. Mm-hmm. So I know if I relapse again, that's most likely it.
Gotcha. All right, so you're not the first sober person I've brought onto this podcast. I think you're like number 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. So, the stories, that I typically hear are, there's a lot of congruency as far as like, I tried my best and I couldn't make it through until X event happened. Mm-hmm. And that's what made me, that's what pulled me through, and I haven't relapsed since. So in your case, do you know what that X event was?
After getting, admitted to the hospital and like sobering up and clearing my mind and thinking back to that day, I thought about a lot of things. I thought about my family, I thought about my kids, And just that day, the fact that I was like, wow, I was just ready to just be done, like for my life to be over. To me, that was it. Like, okay, I have to stop because I don't have a choice. It's either die or stop drinking. So,
how was that different from all the other times that you tried to stop? Because you said you relapsed a few times.
Yeah. All the other times, it wasn't like a moment of like desperation, you know, like I would relapse because I was out with the guys and I'm like, well, I'll just have a drink, which for me that never worked. There was no such thing as one.
No.
Yeah. So every other time it wasn't a matter of relapsing to really deal with a painful issue. It was just a relapse of, oh, it's okay. I think I could have a couple drinks.
I can handle this. I got this.
Exactly.
I've got it under control. It's got me under control.
Yeah, so with that last one too, part of the reason I was like in a really deep state of depression was my wife at the time, now my ex-wife, left, took the kids. So that was, I had been sober for some time when that happened. I was even sober for like a month or so after she left, and then finally one day, that's when I was just like, screw it, what's the point to stay sober now? She's gone with the kids.
Oh, fuck.
Might as well. We started out having fun and then just went downhill like real quick. So yeah, that was the difference with the last one versus the previous ones.
What made you consider your kids and family in that moment versus the other times?
The other times, because I thought I could handle it. You know what I mean? I was just like, oh, if I start, drinking again, I could manage it and it wouldn't be a problem with my family. That was every other time, but then the last time was because I was gonna die, and I was like, well, I don't want to leave my kids without their dad. So yeah, that was the case there.
No, that makes 100% sense with everything that I've been through so far with sobriety and my own journey. It's that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just gonna try to like summarize your experience.
Sure, yeah.
The first few times, it was all about you. And that was your value set, was just you, yourself. I got this. I can handle it. I can control it. It was me, me, me.
Yep.
And then the final moment, your value set shifted. It was no longer about you. It was about somebody else.
Yeah.
And as soon as it became about somebody else, it became bigger than you, and your perspective of the world shifted. And because you changed your value set, that changed your beliefs and principles. Because this is actually someone I met in Maryland through AA who told me this. It's a picture of so I'm going to show you a picture on the phone.
Okay.
I'll blow this up on the camera so you guys can see as well. But he sent me this, right? He showed me this.
Results, habits, actions on top, and then beliefs, principles, values on the bottom.
Yeah. So
the little house.
Yeah. So he said, like, you have to think of your life as a house, and I found, what's the most important part of the house? It's the foundation.
The beliefs, the principles, the values. Okay, I understand the picture now.
Yeah, because like a lot of people, like they see your actions, habits, and results.
I pressed something and then it did something.
That's fine. So like they see your actions, habits, and results. That's the house. That's your four walls and your windows. And you can. That's what everybody sees.
Gotcha.
So when people try to make a change in their life, they change their actions and habits, and then to try to change their results, and that works for a little while. But but what's the most important part of the house?
Yeah, the foundation.
The foundation, the concrete. Because if that's busted, it's a matter of time before you have a bad day, and then that's going to be all she wrote.
Yep.
And I share this with as many people as I can. So but he said, if you want to make lasting change in your life, you have to start at the bottom, the values, beliefs, and principles. Because if you don't have something to value, family, friends, a business you started, whatever it could be, whatever it is here, then you're never going to make lasting proper change in your life, because go back to your example, if you make something about yourself, that's fleeting. But if you make something about someone else, you value other people now, and you being there for them.
Exactly.
So yeah.
So that was pretty good. I like that.
Oh no, I share that with everybody that I can, because again, it's something that's important, because I know from my own experience, and I've just talking with just people, not just people in recovery, just people in general.
it's like a lot of people, they're taught to chase like pleasure principles. You're like, why do you listen to a song you like? It's because it's pleasurable to me, right? And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with listening to music, but like if you just spend all your day listening to music just because it makes you feel good, and you've done nothing throughout the day, you know, it's no different from being addicted to a drug. You know, so when, you know, and at that point you have to understand like what it is that you value. And so, like, you know, like, do you value pleasure principles, or do you value, you know, like, life choices that are going to allow you to build a better future? You can't do that if you're sitting in your room listening to music or high on morphine or drunk off of a bottle. You know, and it was someone in AA who showed me that. The guy was at 15 or 25 years sober. I forget exactly which number.
Nice.
But yeah, so
either way, a multiple of 5.
Yes. Actually, because he told me a similar story to yours, right? He tried to stop several times, and then each time he would just like what you said, like, hey man, I got this. You know, what's one drink? One drink turns into 2, 2 turns into 4, 4 turns into 8, 8 turns into 16, 16 turns into I'm getting my stomach pumped. You know, and then he said he took it took a trip to the doctor one time just to get a checkup, and the doctor was just like holding the notepad like, your daughter's getting married next year, right? Yeah. I'm looking at your kidneys right now and your liver. If you don't stop drinking, do you want to walk your daughter down the aisle? Because if you do, keep drinking. Someone else is going to walk your daughter down the aisle. There's going to be another man teaching your son how to be a man. There's going to be another man playing with your grandkids. There's going to be another man in bed with your wife. But if you stop drinking and you do exactly as I tell you, you will be that man. And at that moment, just like what you told me, his life just shifted.
When you put it like that, wow. Like in the moment, you don't think about it that way.
Right?
Yeah, you just think, woe is me, or whatever the case is, or hey, it's my life, I want to drink, you know? You don't think that far ahead. That really, like, wow. Yeah, that's powerful.
It is. No, that guy changed my perspective on everything. Sorry, I don't mean to make this about me. This is, you know.
No, that's fine, man. Like you said, we're just having a conversation.
For sure. But I mean, I want to get to know more about like you and your journey, like your journey through sobriety, and like see if I could, you know, extract nuggets from you to help other people in a journey. Because like, what does recovery mean to you?
That's like, wow. That's a good question. Not only, I mean, sobriety is a huge part of recovery, you know, maintaining that sobriety. But for me, recovery is finding value in yourself. Like, I drank that much because I didn't value myself. Like, really, I hated myself, you know? So I figured if I'm destroying my own body, what does it matter? Because I don't like it anyways. And the recovery journey, I think the root of it is being able to love yourself. That's recovery, learning to love yourself.
What does that entail? I like to go deep.
Yeah. Now for me, what it entailed was the first thing I had to do to learn to love myself was, because in that moment when I like felt like I was giving up, you know, like, well, I didn't feel like I did give up. It was only because somebody came and got me. Once I like kind of cleared my head and everything and realized what was happening, I straight up asked God to save me. Like, I was like, I know I can't do this by myself, you know. And I had been raised in you know, going to church and everything, but as I became an adult, I just kind of like, you know,
it fell to the side?
Yeah, you know, I grew apart from the church and everything, so I kind of always had, like, you know, faith and, you know, and a belief in God, but it was that moment that I was like, God, I need you to help me get through this. And then starting to go to church and learning about, you know, a different way of thinking about God than kind of what I was taught, growing up, because I grew up going to Catholic school. I went to Catholic church, and it was always kind of like, hey, we're sinners, we're horrible people. We got to beg for forgiveness because, we're not good enough, which is still, the case. But learning later on, after going into the hospital, learning that God loves me, after starting going to church again and learning that, and then really learning the depths of it, all the examples that they were able to give me. And I was like, wow, God loves me. And at the time, I'm thinking of myself like, when I'm a piece of crap, you know what I mean? If God could love me, how can I not love me,
That's powerful.
And started learning more and more about that. And then the more I learned about it, the more I learned to love myself, because none of us are perfect. We all have our flaws, we're all human beings, we all make mistakes. Mm-hmm. So instead of just sitting and dwelling on all those mistakes I made, I learned to accept the fact that God loves me. He's already forgiven me for that sin. I just gotta, straight up ask him, like, with the pure heart, like, hey, I'm really sorry for what I did. Please forgive me. And learning to do that and practicing that helped me get over all the things I had done and allowed me to learn to love myself.
How instrumental was the Christian or Catholic?
I go to a non-denominational Christian church now.
Okay, so how instrumental was the church journey towards your growth? Could you have arrived at where you are today without that? The reason I ask this is because a lot of people that I talk to who want to quit drinking, they avoid going to AA meetings because of how strongly attached it is to Christian faith.
Yeah.
Which I'm neither for nor against. It's for some people, it's not for some people.
Yeah.
But what I see is, as a result, a lot of them don't choose sobriety because they're like, it's tied so strong to Christianity.
Mm-hmm. And if I remember correctly, the beginning of the question was how, like, where would I be without that?
Yeah.
Right? So I think I would have been able to maintain my sobriety strictly through the Phoenix, which I'll get into in a minute, my recovery program. Mm-hmm. I think I would have been able to maintain sobriety for a time with that, right? Because what I learned through that program was like having fun with other people and building a community of sober, like-minded people. I think that would have helped initially, but I think it would have eventually kind of faded out because I wouldn't have learned to fully love myself.
The values and principles.
Exactly. So I would have learned to have fun. I don't remember the thing exactly, but I know there was like habits and actions, right?
So it goes values, beliefs, principles. Because your values create beliefs, which solidify your principles.
Absolutely.
And out of your principles, you have your actions. Your actions develop into habits, and your habits create results.
Yeah. So I would have had those habits, or the actions, habits.
Actions, habits, results.
I would have had that because the action, going to the Phoenix, hanging out with sober folks, right? The habit, continuing to do that, and the results, like, hey, I'm meeting people, I'm staying sober, but I wouldn't have had that foundation, those values and those beliefs. What was it again? Values?
Values, principles, beliefs.
Beliefs, yeah. There you go. I wouldn't have had those. The house would have fell eventually. Water would have came and washed away the sandy foundation. Or
hurricane would have came through.
Something like that, yeah. So yeah, to answer that question, I would not be sober today had it not been for my submission to God and leaning on Him to help me get through this.
Gotcha. So what would you say to those people who are afraid to go to AA because they're like, I don't want to get brainwashed or whatever, or have God forced onto me? And it's a huge part of the AA world. It is. And that's kind of weird for me, and that's a tough one because I did start going to AA when I first came out of treatment and while I was going to church. And I felt like there wasn't enough spiritual emphasis on it. Like, it's like they talk about it, it's been so long since I've gone to AA, but I know God's mentioned in the steps. And the 12 steps.
Yeah, He's mentioned in there, right? But I think that's really it. We're not praying. Oh, they pray at the end. Yeah. But during the thing, we're not like opening in prayer. We're not like, hey, who has any prayer requests? We're not going off of the Bible, off how to maintain our sobriety. So those are the things, because at my church I went through like a treatment program at my church, which was all Bible-based teachings. So to me, AA didn't provide enough of that, and then also just the style of it wasn't for me. It just didn't click. I kind of felt depressed going there. And I always tell people, I'm not saying AA is bad. It works great for some people. It just didn't work for me. And going in and just talking about drinking all the time made me want to drink. You know what I mean? So for those people that shy away from AA strictly because of the spiritual aspect of it, the fact that God's mentioned in it,
what should they do?
Yeah, if that's not their thing, there's plenty of other programs out there. AA isn't the end all be all. And I know I mentioned the Phoenix earlier for a quick second. That's another option right there. So the Phoenix, and you attend it.
So I know the Phoenix, you know the Phoenix, but I don't think they know the Phoenix.
Oh, I know. I was about to get into that. Right. But so with the Phoenix being a sober, active community that provides activities for people, that are in recovery or people that are just trying to stay sober, that's a huge avenue or a resource, I should say, that people can use, because there's no spiritual, or there's not any emphasis on it like that, because the Phoenix embraces all pathways to recovery, and it's an all-inclusive, safe and supportive environment. So whatever your belief system is, we're gonna back that up. If that's helping you stay sober, keep doing it. We're proud of you, and let us know how we can help. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's like treatment centers, so many different programs. It's like, all right, now that you're done, AA, that's your only option. Make sure you go to AA. Yeah. And then if you go to AA, it's like, if you don't do it this way, you're gonna relapse, you're gonna die. If you don't do X, Y, and Z the way we say it. So, and that's not all AA, meetings or programs. That's just some that I've seen. So yeah, that's another option. And there's I know there's things like Smart Recovery, which is another like a AA program that's strictly just like science-based. So there's options out there. Yeah.
How do people find these options?
So for me, like, I was introduced to all these different kind of resources and programs during my out processing, during my inpatient treatment program, and then of course it's reinforced during outpatient treatment and partial hospitalization treatment. But there's places, of course, like the Phoenix.org that they could check out and start attending our events. As far as just like overall to look for like a menu of different, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm sure if you Google it, there's something out there.
Just Google sober recovery programs in my city.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Okay.
That's what I would do.
So, are you sober from just alcohol, or like alcohol and substances, or like do you have a history with substances?
I do have a history with substances. So, as a kid, I grew up in LA. In the 90s is when I was a teenager.
Double Oi.
Yeah, so drugs were everywhere. So in high school, I think I probably did like every drug that there is, like street drug. We didn't have access to pills.
MDMA.
I don't know, like that wasn't big until way later. But like, when I was a teenager, we were using meth. Meth was like the big thing. And of course, smoking weed, coke and crack came in the picture, heroin, PCP. Those were like the main ones we were doing. Mushrooms, yeah. Acid, yeah. So this was
acid.
This was a huge like rave time. People were doing ecstasy, but for whatever reason, it wasn't like normal for us, for my group. But acid and mushrooms were. Yeah. So we'd go to raves and do all that kind of stuff. But then I was doing all those things, and then I became an adult. I ended up joining the military. You can't use drugs.
Zero tolerance.
In the military, yeah.
You can't even invest in cannabis-related stocks.
Yeah, so it's crazy. Yeah. But the Army is totally cool with you drinking. So the drugs that I didn't use, I made up for with alcohol. So my alcohol consumption increased significantly because I didn't have any other outlet. When I was a teenager, if I'm like, oh, I don't want to get drunk tonight, but shoot, I could smoke some weed and just chill out and have a good time, you know? Or if, hey, I just want to go completely bonkers tonight, but I don't want to be throwing up and passing out, I'll, you know, drop some acid and eat a couple shrooms and have a blast, you know? So that's the way it was. But once I didn't have all those things, it's like, well, what's my option? Get drunk. That was it. So yeah, those other drugs it took no effort. It was just like, oh, I can't do those drugs anymore. Bye. But alcohol, man, that was the tough one to get away from.
That's wild because because I'm hearing that story and I'm thinking of everything that I've been through in life and seen and people I've talked to. It's because everybody knows that alcohol can really run run you over like a tank.
Yeah.
But that's the one that's legal versus like. I'm not saying I'm advocating for weed or even shrooms, but
I understand.
Like those are like way less mild, and even like especially nowadays, like those have like a lot, like they're becoming very mainstream as far as being medicinal and helpful to people.
Yeah.
But the Army is still not okay with those, but they're okay with alcohol.
Yeah, but as soon as you get in trouble because of alcohol, that's it. They're they're slamming you.
Yeah.
You're done. But as long as you're not getting in trouble, you can get as drunk as you want and nobody has a problem with it.
As long as you don't get in trouble.
Yep. I know, right? That doesn't last very long.
How did they even define that?
Getting a DUI, domestic violence, you know, things like that. Getting an alcohol-related incident, you know, like bar fight and you're drunk or things like that.
So the natural stuff that comes with alcohol.
Yeah. Yeah, so all the things that will eventually happen to you if you continue drinking heavily. Yeah.
Yeah. Do they have like a guideline or like a? Does the military have a recovery program?
They do. Different branches have different ones. They call it. You know, they all have their own names for it. But the Army is called ASAP, the Army Substance Abuse Program. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's good.
But usually, ASAP.
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting there ASAP. But usually what ends up happening is when you enter those programs, you kind of like kill your career because it's like you admit you have a problem, people can't trust you, you know, so they, you know, that's what they think. They can't trust you, you're not reliable, you can't even control your own drinking. How are you going to function as a soldier? So it's like they say, you know, hey, if you need help, ask for it. There'll be no repercussions, but there are.
No repercussions as in we won't kick you out the Army, but we're not sending you into the field of battle anymore.
Yeah, or you know those you know elite positions you want, or those cool missions, or whatever the case is. Nah, you're gonna sit here and maybe babysit some younger soldiers, or
you see that SEAL team. That's a no to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because like even if you're physically compromised, like you broke a bone in the past, you still can't join the Army.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it's just an extension of that, which I guess it kind of makes sense. Does it make sense to you?
It does and it doesn't. If that's the case, if that, like you're saying, you know, like, oh, you're like have a flaw that prevents you from continuing to serve, then say that. Don't say, hey, we support you, then nothing's going to happen to you if you admit you have a problem, and then do the opposite when you do. You know what I mean?
So the spirit is correct, but the delivery mechanism is flawed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So here's an interesting thing that I've been thinking about recently, and I'm still not sure where I land on this specific question, and I'm curious to hear your perspective, because as somebody who works very deeply in the recovery field these days, is there a scenario where someone shouldn't consider recovery?
Shouldn't?
Yes.
Not that I could think of. And when I think of recovery, I think of, you know, when I was talking about
not recovery. Choose sobriety.
Sobriety.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of, that's what I was about to get into that, like defining the two and making sure I understood the question as that, and that's what I was getting to. Yeah.
Okay.
So sobriety. Gosh, you know what? There's so many like variables. To me, it's going to be easier to just say there's no reason not to be sober. Because you don't miss anything.
You don't.
Like me not drinking, I'm not missing out on anything other than a hangover and feeling like crap.
And
and feeling guilty and having anxiety, and that's the only thing I'm missing out on.
And spending $12 on a on a cup this big when a cup this big of water is free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, the money. Yeah, but towards the end of my addiction, like I was a cheap drunk. I didn't go out and drink. I bought the cheap bottle of vodka at Winn-Dixie.
Bottom shelf.
Yeah, $10-15, and that was good. So. Yeah. I didn't say, like, it was funny because in treatment they're like, oh, think of all the money you're gonna save, and I did it. I'm like, I'm gonna save like a couple $100.
And that's like, a car payment.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm not talking about a month. I'm talking about like over several months. Maybe that was an exaggeration, but still, some people are like, I'm saving thousands of dollars, and I'm like, dang, what did you do? Like, how did you drink?
Blue Label.
Right, exactly, at the bar. But so yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to be sober. You gain nothing from using drugs or alcohol.
So the reason this thought entered my mind was because I was talking with somebody else I met. I didn't meet them through recovery, but they just happened to be in recovery themselves. Mm-hmm. And her fiance is a functioning alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And just in my own experience, and this is purely me, I'm not saying this is the world, this is anecdotal. Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as a functioning alcoholic or functioning addict. You're either an addict who's crashed or an addict who's on their way to crash. That's been my experience. Yeah. But she debated me heavily that he's functioned this way for 15 years. So I'm like, well, when he crashes, it's going to be a crash that took 15 years to happen, which means it's going to be a big crash. But she was like, he makes like 6 figures. The house is paid, the cars are good, family's good. He takes care of the kids. He takes care of me. Mm-hmm. He just when he drinks a lot. I'm like, but why is he drinking a lot? But she kept making the case, and she was adamant about it. And it could be through rose-colored lenses. I don't know because I never met the guy. I met her that day, and she saw I had a Phoenix bracelet on, and she asked me about it, and I just told her like what Phoenix does. Yeah. And then we just got into the conversation. But she was very adamant. So it got me thinking, like, is my perspective incorrect? Are there people who can function at that high level? Am I wrong?
People can function at a whatever high level is relevant, right? Mm-hmm. So people can function in a successful manner, like you were saying, good job, nice house, wife and kids, mm-hmm. but for a time, because I was, I guess, what one might consider a functioning alcoholic, you know what I mean, for like 20 years. Yeah. So, and eventually I crashed and burned, and I used to say the same thing. I signed up for special ops while I was in the Army. I went through the pipeline, through...
Special ops is hardcore.
And, I did all the physical and mental things that you had to do, and I was getting drunk the entire time. Mm-hmm. And then once I got accepted and got into the unit, our thing, the guys in my team, like, our joke was, if you could do it drunk, you could do it even better sober. So we would train drunk. We would drink all the time. And, we thought that, like, hey, look how great we could still perform even though we're drunk. Eventually, that runs out, especially as you start getting older. When you're in your 20s,
you're a tank.
Even up to your early 30s, yeah, you could dust that stuff off and get up the next morning and perform what you may think is, peak performance. It's still,
You're compromised.
Yeah, compromised, but... Other people may see it as peak performance, and you can only do that for so long before you crash and burn. And like the example you gave me with that guy, like, that caught my attention when you said, why is he drinking so much? There's obviously something wrong. Mm-hmm. And because you and I both know, you're not gonna, when you drink or get high, it's to escape reality or to numb something. Mm-hmm. Because if you're okay, why would you want to numb yourself or escape reality if life is so great, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously that guy's dealing with something.
Well, what if he's just a high-level whiskey connoisseur, and he's just trying all the different flavors that exist, the different scotches,
all in one sitting? Hey, man!
All in one sitting.
I'm not gonna knock anybody. Yeah. I don't judge people, yeah. But if you're asking me, yeah, I mean,
for his case, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
but I just know that from experience.
Exact same experience as me. Yeah, I've seen it. I've lived it, and I've seen it. You know, there's no way to just say, oh, I could just keep drinking at this, you know, level and still continue to perform the way I am for the rest of my life. It's impossible.
Yeah,
I think. This is my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're on the same page. I haven't seen anything that says otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So given your background with drugs and alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
what is your perspective on like this current narrative that's floating around a lot of mainstream media, like Joe Rogan's promoting it, just the use of shrooms, specifically shrooms, and like other like forms of like MDMA, not MDMA. What are they using? Just different styles of cannabis for healing and for like opening your mind. So like no longer being used recreationally, but being used medicinally. Because I'm not gonna lie, I hear him talk about this stuff, and I'm like, and I have so much respect for Joe, and I'm like, and he brings in guys like Andrew Huberman, another guy I'm like that I highly respect. I'm like, and it gets me very curious, and I'm not gonna lie, the temptations are strong. Yeah. Because I still deal with a lot of crap inside here. Yeah. And I'm like,
I understand. I totally understand.
Yeah, so I'm like, and have like these really smart guys just out there just telling me like, hey, you know, like these things can help, and I'm like. And I have friends who tell me like it helps them, and I'm like, that's kind of how it starts.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's what led to the first bottle I ever picked up, which led to like not pretty places.
Yeah.
But then like, I mean, I guess I have an addictive personality, but I'm curious as to like what your perspective on like this whole growth of that narrative has been.
My perspective, my opinion, as far as the like the hallucinogens go. Personally, I wouldn't do it because of my previous experience with them. So I'm linked to that. Like I feel like if I was to go into even a controlled environment, which is what they do, because it caught my interest, so I looked into it. I don't know if it would help me, but I know I've read about it, and I've read reports and all kinds of stuff about it. And the way it's done is in like a controlled environment. You have a medical professional guiding you through that process of, because supposedly, the hallucinogens are supposed to open up different parts of the mind that help you overcome different traumas. The thing that caught my attention was they're using it to treat PTSD. Yeah. And I was diagnosed with PTSD. So I was like, that's interesting. How the heck are they doing that? So to me, to answer the question for the hallucinogens, if it works for people, then go for it. I mean, how's that any worse than taking a pill of whatever the heck to...
Taking an SSRI?
I'm not familiar with that, but...
Antidepressant.
Oh, antidepressant. Okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, a hallucinogen is a lot more extreme than that, but just think of the overall, like, because I was on a lot of, like, antidepressants, anti-anxiety pills, all that stuff, and it was starting to, like, all the different medications that I was prescribed were compromising my kidney functions.
Yeah, that's one of their effects.
Yeah, exactly. So, I've weaned myself off of the medications. But, so if hallucinogens work for people, great. I never knock anybody because everything affects everyone different. Just like everyone's pathway to recovery is different. I'm sure there's some people who can get that treatment from mushrooms or LSD and be totally okay. But I'm sure there's probably going to be some people that it doesn't work out for them, And then as far as like medical marijuana goes, me personally, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, because I know people who are prescribed tons of pills, and then they wanted to kick them, and then everyone gets, they're like, well, if you're smoking something, how is that, like medicinal, or you can get there's even pills of it, or liquid forms, or whatever, candies, whatever the case is. And if that, because it's a natural derived, chemical from a plant, if you're able to, replace all those medications by taking that, then why not? I mean, anything I've read or studied up on it, I've never heard of anyone, being under the influence of THC and say, like beating their wife or, wrecking their car or...
No, they just want to sit there and eat.
Yeah. So that's the biggest side effect, right? I mean, I may be wrong. I mean, I'm not saying, anyone that watches this that, hey, that's a matter of fact. But, from what I've seen. So, I mean, if that helps them with their arthritis or, with their anxiety, whatever the case, then why not? Or sleeping or, there's tons of reasons people take it. So pain, why not? If they're able to do that and not use other stuff, heck yeah.
And it doesn't seem that a lot of people get addicted to specifically shrooms and marijuana and cannabis. I think the closest is people become reliant on it, but they don't have the addictive traits that you would with like heroin, which just or crack, which just ruins.
You ever seen the movie Half Baked? You remember with it? I'm not gonna repeat the quote, but Bob Saget.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So I always think of that. Like I've never known anybody to go to those extremes to get THC products. I've seen people go through extremes for alcohol though. I myself have done things. No, I'm not saying I did the things that they're talking about in Half Baked, but what I mean? I've put myself in situations that could have ended very ugly. Had say the police gotten involved, or you know what I mean, or I've driven under the influence to get more alcohol, and it's just like think of all the things that could have happened. It was only by the grace of God that I got there and home safely, Yeah. So I just think about things like that.
Yeah. It reminds me of this one time I only had 3 shots and a beer, so I was perfectly fine until I found out that I drove like 3 miles with like 2 busted tires. And like the rims were just destroyed.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. And it wasn't even my car; it was my dad's car.
One beer.
It was a beer and 3 shots.
There you go.
I don't remember what the frick I was drinking that night. I was just on my way to pick up a girl that just rolled up in front of her house. She's like, "Why is your car sparking?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Yeah, you just drove and there's like sparks under your car." It was my rims just like shattering, or my dad's rims. So I was like,
yeah.
Never told them. I just got them replaced at the Honda shop the very next day.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Oh yeah, that was
crazy.
That was a $800 lesson.
Yikes.
Yeah, especially when you're 19 years old.
Yeah, that sucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was worth it, right? For those 3 shots in that beer to pay $800.
Yeah, and I didn't even get to take her out on a date.
Yeah.
Which she probably did the right thing of not getting in the car with me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. If I think back how many times like I missed out on opportunities like that because I was drunk. Yeah. It's crazy.
All right, so back to you as far as like your drinking journey is concerned. Did you have a problem with drinking if you were to look back on it, did you have a problem from the get-go, or was it like under control and functioning, and then at one point it just suddenly spiraled or just spiked? No,
I think it was like I didn't realize it back then, but looking back now, I think it was a problem from the get-go. Because after going through treatment, they address like what causes one to, like we were talking about earlier, numbing yourself or escaping reality or whatever, right? So digging into the traumas and digging into my childhood and my past, looking back now, I can remember my first communion. I don't know if you're familiar with First Communion.
Yeah, but I know a little bit about Catholic practices.
So, in Catholicism, in the Catholic Church, there's kind of like different steps of progression, throughout your life that you have to like accomplish, I guess, in order to be a good Catholic, for lack of a better term. So the First Communion is something you do in first grade, when you receive the body of Christ and the blood of Christ, and it's wine. It's real wine inside the cup.
Inside the goblet and the bread.
Yeah,
so the body of Christ being broken down. Yeah.
So when I drank the wine my very first time, and I remember feeling it go inside my body and getting that warm feeling. Like, this is so crazy thinking about it. As a kid, as a teenager, during my addiction, I didn't think about that. But addressing everything in my past, and I thought about that day, and I'm like, man, that's crazy. Like, I can remember that feeling of like, ooh, this feels good. And then it's not like, right after that, I ran to the liquor store and got some beer and started getting drunk. I was a kid.
But it planted that seed.
And then as I became a teenager and started like drinking at parties, and stuff like that, Looking back now, yeah, it was a problem right away because I didn't just have a couple beers. We got like blackout drunk every time we drank.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was definitely a problem from the get-go.
And that was in high school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, getting blackout drunk since I started getting drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 43 now. You know, I've been sober for 3 years. So let me see, from 13 to like 40, it was at
37. No, 27.
27 years, yeah. 27 years of getting blackout drunk as often as I could.
Mm.
How the heck I'm still alive, I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's gnarly.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you never took that first drink
Mm-hmm.
as a communion,
Mm-hmm.
how do you think you would have turned out? Or do you think it was the seed was planted already, and that was that? So was that first drink a seed, or was that first drink a fertilizer?
I think it was maybe a seed. The fertilizer, and again, I dealt with this in treatment. You know, as a kid, I didn't think about this, but at 13, my father died, and he passed away from cancer. And at his funeral, one of my cousins gave me a beer, and he was like, "Hey, this is gonna make you feel better."
Oh,
So one, I already knew that it would make me feel better because I remember. Maybe I didn't remember it then. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I'm sure even though we don't think about things, we know how
made it easier to say yes.
the subconscious mind was probably telling me like,
Yes.
yeah, it makes you feel better. Remember when you had that sip of wine and how good it made you feel? So, you know, I started drinking. And then soon after that, you know, that's when I started going to parties. You know, I was in high school and getting drunk. So I think that day at my father's funeral was like the fertilizer. And then I just continued to fertilize it as time went on.
This makes me wonder, how many other kids at their first communion are experiencing this seed planting feeling?
You know what's even crazier too, now that I think about it, and I remember talking to somebody about this too, that so the fertilizer started before my father's funeral, because when I went to Catholic school, I was an altar boy, and those are like the young men that help the priests, you know, during mass. We hold the Bible for them while they're reading, stuff like that. We go and get the bread and the wine and bring it out there. And I remember, I don't remember what grade this was, maybe like 5th grade. We were in the back drinking the wine.
Hey, yo.
And we were drunk during mass. Me and a buddy of mine, I remember us just like trying to power through mass because we were drunk, trying to make sure that no one realized that we were. So yeah, that started even before my 13th not birthday, but before my father passing. Yeah.
How many people do you think have the same story where they're like, they're getting drunk at church off of church wine, and that's what started this?
Other than my buddies that were there with me, I don't know anyone else.
Because I grew up Christian, right? I mean, I'm Buddhist these days, but like just only just because I enjoy the teachings of Buddhism. I'm not like a diehard or whatever, but like I grew up on Christian values and principles, going to a church. And so like I know exactly like the whole wine ceremony, and I'm just thinking back on it right now, like as we broke apart the bread, or as the pastor broke apart the bread and dipped it, he would always like all the way at the end, once everyone sat down, he would just in front of everybody just chug the entire cup. And as a kid I was told that that's just grape juice. And as a kid, I don't know the difference. But now that I'm thinking back on it, I'm like, wait, I can recall the taste.
It wasn't grape juice.
It was grape juice.
Oh, was it?
No. It was, yeah.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like it was fermented grape juice.
Yeah.
So
there you go. Yeah, you're right. It still is technically grape juice.
Is there a deep alcohol problem in the Catholic Church community?
From my experiences, yeah.
There is?
I think so. Yeah, because it's not really addressed like as a problem or something that people should seek help with. I mean, not any time I was attending, and even in the past trying to get help to stop drinking, because before I started attending this Christian church, I still considered myself Catholic, and occasionally would still go to Catholic Mass. So when I was trying to get sober, I talked to one of the priests at the church on the base I was stationed at, and he's just like, oh, just pray. I'm like, that's it? Just pray? That's going to help me get sober? He's like, yeah, if you have faith, just pray and you'll be sober. Like, no other options, no help, no, hey, talk to these people, or hey, we have this class that you can attend. Nothing. That was just it. Yeah. So I don't know. I can't say that there is a problem, but I've never seen it addressed or like any effort made to help curb that problem.
This is giving me a lot to think about, just on the church side now, Catholic and Christian, both sides. And this is not really something I've ever thought about, but the more I think about it, the more I can see just how it can breed an alcoholism type of environment, just because the wine is there and it's available. Am I thinking too far into this?
Maybe not. I don't know.
I feel like this is a very dangerous rabbit hole to crawl down. Alcoholism in the Catholic Church. I mean, they've got other reputational problems to work on. That I'm not going to go into. Yeah,
and again, everything I said is just my experiences. I can't say what overall is an issue with any certain group.
Gotcha. So one of the most heartbreaking things that exists in the recovery world and sobriety world is seeing people relapse.
Yeah.
What do you think are the causal factors of the relapse, and what can be done to help people out more?
Gosh, there's so many reasons that people relapse. That's a tough one, man. That's one of those ones that there's just so many reasons and so many variables and so many ways to combat those things. It's like almost endless. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, though, what would cause me to relapse was being complacent. Thinking that I got this, thinking I could manage my drinking, and then not having that community to help me stay sober. Because I would get sober, but I was still around the same people doing the same things. Right?
That's a ticking time bomb.
Yeah, exactly. So the question was, how can we stop relapses, or why? Why do people relapse?
Why? Yeah. What are the reasons people relapse, and what can be done to help them more? It's something I think about a lot, and I know everyone's journey is different.
It is.
So how do you craft a system around that?
Yeah. So from my experience, I relapsed in the past because I didn't have that community to help me stay sober. I wasn't connected. If I wasn't doing the same things with the same people, I was withdrawing from everyone, which can cause depression, which can cause someone to drink, which can cause them to be depressed, cause them to drink more, and be more depressed. Anyways, so people relapse because they're not connected to a community. That's why people relapse, in my opinion, from my experience. And then what can we do to combat the relapse? I think the biggest thing is to help reduce that stigma around recovery, because people relapse. Some people relapse, like myself, because they were hiding the fact that they had a problem, and they were hiding the fact that they were in recovery, and they were just trying to keep it hush hush and just be sober on their own. I think the way that we combat that is reduce the stigma, let it be known. We don't have to be anonymous. We could say, hey, I'm sober because if I drink, it's a problem.
We can wear hoodies that say sober across the chest.
Why not, right? Yeah. Be proud of it. I mean, it's something to be proud of, I think. That's how we can help stop that. I think by being like straight up front with it. Because one of the things that I did, because I was so extreme in like, I gotta stay sober this time, that I told everybody, everyone I talked to, I was just like, I didn't just walk up to people like, hey, I'm in a recovery journey, I'm not drinking. You know what I mean? But whenever I saw the opportunity, I would bring it up. And then I would talk about the fact, if people ask me like, why'd you stop drinking, or, whatever the case, I found a way to bring it back was, if I drink again, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And when people hear like you being so blunt and upfront about it,
that's real.
I had more people supporting me in staying sober than I ever thought I would. In the past, when I was just like, oh, I just don't feel like drinking right now.
Oh, come on, man, just one drink.
Yeah, exactly. They don't think, and I don't fault the people for doing that, because if they don't understand, they don't know that they're doing something wrong. They think they're being friendly and generous. You know what I mean? But until you're straight up front, like, look, I cannot drink because if I do, I'll die. It puts a whole nother perspective on it, and people react completely differently. And I think a lot of people are afraid that people are gonna like have a negative reaction to it, and occasionally you will. I've had people that are like, "What? Are you serious?" But most people that I talk to are like, "Oh my gosh, wow, I didn't realize that." Okay, like, yeah, hey, I'm sorry. You know, if I offered you a drink, like, you know, in the future I won't do that. I'm here to support you. So
I had a girl who actually cried because we were on a date and she accidentally ordered a beer in front of me. And she cried. I'm like, it's okay. I'm fine.
I'm good now. Like, you could drink it right in front of me. It won't even bother me.
It's been 4 years. I'm fine.
Yeah.
At that point, it's 3. So I'm like, it's been 3 years. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah. But she actually broke down in tears, which actually shocked me.
Wow. Sounds like she cared. No. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
That's another subject.
That's a story for off cameras. All right. So a lot of times we hear about like these tragic stories when we're talking about like just alcoholism, whatever. I want to take what your words into spirit, and I want to hear some success stories. Tell me some success stories of recovery. It could be yours or someone else's. Too oftentimes we focus on the negative aspects of how tough it is, but I'm like, well, if we keep telling people how tough it is, it might scare them. But if we tell people hey, you know, like, yes, it's tough, but I want to hear some success stories. Inspire me, Disneyfy it for me.
Okay. Well, I'll start with mine because I know mine the best, obviously.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned earlier, I was drinking heavily for 27 years. And then through my faith and my reliance on God, my submission to God, and plugging into a community like the Phoenix, and staying consistent with both of those things, I've been sober for, let me see, I got sober July 11th of 2019. So that's like 3 years and some change. Be 4 years next July. So I'd say that's a pretty huge success in my book, from someone who never thought they could stop drinking, couldn't live without alcohol, was ready to just die so I can continue drinking, to someone who's been sober for multiple years now and loving life and enjoying every bit of it. I think that's a huge success story right there.
That's 100% a success story. What else you got?
And then I know other people at church. Of course, I don't know their whole stories. I don't know, you know, everything they did, but I know just like on the surface, them kind of same thing, submitting to God and relying on Him to help them stay sober. They've been sober for multiple years, longer than I have. So, I've seen it a lot.
I know this guy who actually, who's on his like 25th token, right? And like every time he meets someone new, he goes,
25th
right.
white chip?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
So he goes, all right, here's my 1 year, here's my 3 year, here's my 5 years. I want those back in 1, 3, and 5 years. And these people are like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, that's no pressure at all.
Right?
Yeah.
Yikes.
But then they tell me like, whenever they get weak, they just pull out that token like, yo, this has 1 on it, this has 5 on it, this has 10 on it. You know, like he just like hands those out to people, and like he says he's missing a few, but he's gotten more back than he's lost. And I'm like, wow, that is like one of the most powerful stories.
Yeah.
Ever.
Crazy.
Right?
Yeah, man.
Awesome. So someone is So and I agree with you 100%. Like, people need to hear that it's okay to be sober more often, because I think too many people, like you described, they tell their friends, you know, they're skittish about it. Like, I just don't want to drink, and then people try to pressure them anyway. But then like when they meet people who have several years into it, it makes them feel better. About it, and I think that's really important to get out there.
Absolutely.
So if somebody is, so say somebody's watching this right now and they're skittish about it, and you know, but they also want to start their own journey, what would you tell them?
How important is it to you that you live your life to the fullest? Is it more important to please other people, or is it more important to be your best self? If you want to be your best self, sometimes you got to be blunt and straight up with people and give them the hard, cold truth.
You have to be blunt.
Yeah. That's what I had to do. I went to that extreme, like I was saying, just straight up, like, if I drink, I'll die. That catches people's attention. And if that's not the case for you, then find that thing what's the worst case scenario for you if you relapse? Use that as the driver and use that as the example you give people.
Go into that a little bit more when you said, what is the worst case scenario?
Yeah. Some people, like for me, it was my life. If I relapse, I'm going to lose my life. I fully believe that. For some people, it's like, man, I know if I drink again, my wife's going to leave me. How important is your wife to you? Is alcohol more important than your wife? Or is your wife more important than alcohol? Make that decision. If it's alcohol, then hey, by all means, live your life if that's what works for you. I'm not going to judge anyone or tell them what they should or shouldn't do, but think about that. Which one do you want? Do you want your wife or do you want to get drunk? And that's just an example. I don't know, the job. Do you like your job? Your job may have said, hey, you're drinking too much, you need to sober up and we need you to perform. Do you like your job? Do you want to keep doing that? Or do you want to have money and have a house and food, or do you want to be drunk or high or whatever the case is? I always use drunk because that was my problem.
Drunk, high, or sometimes there's people who are just addicted to negative thoughts.
Yeah, or addicted to gambling or junk food. The same thing, like you said, that doctor told that guy, like, hey, do you want to walk your daughter down the aisle? I know there's got to be people like, hey, if you don't watch what you eat, or your weight, or your cholesterol, whatever the case is, you won't you won't make it to walk your daughter down the aisle. So yeah, addiction's addiction, regardless of what the substance is.
Have you ever had to sit somebody down and tell them they have a problem? Done an intervention?
No, I have not done that myself, no.
Has anyone ever done that to you?
No, not like a traditional intervention, for lack of a better term. But no, I've gotten my wife at the time, yelling at me or, talking smack, like, yeah, you need to sober up or else I'm leaving, stuff like that. Yeah. But never like a sit down, like, hey, we need to sit and talk about your drinking habits because it's becoming a problem. Nah, never had anything like that.
But at least you had your wife, in her way, tell you that you had a problem.
Yeah. I knew I did. I was just in denial, though.
I guess that answers my next question, which was how come her telling you didn't change you?
I think the delivery.
Yeah.
Was like, yeah, you suck, which just made me say, oh yeah, forget you then.
Which sent your depression downwards.
Yeah.
Which made you want to drink more.
Exactly. Yeah. It was that, like, inside, but then on the outside, I was like, I'm not gonna let you tell me what to do. You say stop drinking, I'm gonna go drink more.
The whole thing where you compress people and they're gonna press back.
Exactly.
So how would someone go about telling their friend that, hey, you need to make a change in your life, whether it's drugs, alcohol, obesity, or insert problem here?
I would say approach it with love and care. Because I fully believe, like, if my wife at the time had have come at it with a different approach, like, like, baby, I'm really worried about you. Look at what's happening to our family. Let's look what's happening to the kids. Like, I'm not saying that would have, caused me to stay sober right there on the spot, but it definitely would have gave me a different, point of view or a different, reaction versus, like, being told that I'm a piece of crap and how bad of a father I am because I'm drinking so heavily. You know what I mean? Yeah, because some people may respond to that, but I know for me, if it was approached with love and a caring approach, I think it would have had a different effect. So since for me that's what works, that's how I would approach it to others. Not saying that works for everyone, but that's how I would approach it.
Gotcha. All right. So I know you're pressed for time, so I don't want to. I want to be respectful. So just final question, which is going to be, what kind of impact would you like to have on the world?
Ooh, just like sky's the limit type of thing, or
You can answer that question any way you choose to.
type of impact I would like to have on the world is to let everyone know that you can live without alcohol. That you could still enjoy life without alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible. Yeah.
100%. I can definitely get behind that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, brother. Enjoyed this conversation a lot.
Thank you, Rex.
No, it's very insightful, actually.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you.
Oh,
Good seeing you again.
Likewise, man.
Yeah.
All right, and the camera's off. Eventually.
Dude, my phone